Imagine making $250,000 a year in Manhattan and being broke. It's a paradox, right? But for most of you, it's just, reality. I'm king and I'm here because you are likely a Henry, a high earner, not rich yet. You have the six-figure lease, you have the designer debt, and you have zero freedom. If you don't pivot, you are staring at a very expensive bankruptcy by age 65. Today, I am giving you the map to escape this trap. You need this logic, you need this math, you need this plan. Subscribe to protect your wealth, like right now. Let's look at the numbers. Let's really look at it because you probably haven't. You've been too busy chasing the next promotion to actually sit down and do the math of your own failure. You see, you're what we call a Henry, a high earner. Not rich yet, but if you keep doing what you're doing, you're never going to get to that rich part. You're just going to be a very well-dressed person living in a very expensive cage. Here's the thing about your six-figure salary. You think you're making $250,000 or $300,000 a year, and you feel like a king. But you forget that you don't actually own that money. You're just a middleman. You're a high-speed transit system for cash to pass through you on its way to someone else's bank account. You think you're the lead actor in a movie about success, but you're really just the guy holding the boom mic for the people who actually own the studio. Let's start with the big one. You pay your taxes first. You live in NYC, or maybe you're out in San Francisco. You're looking at a tax hit of 35%, maybe 40% when you factor in state and city taxes. Poof. Almost half of your hard work is gone before you even see it. You haven't even bought a cup of coffee yet, and you've already lost a massive chunk of your power. You're working from January to May just to pay for the privilege of living in a zip code that makes you feel important. Then you look at your housing. You need that luxury apartment, right? You need the doorman, the gym you never use, and the floor-to-ceiling windows. You're dropping $5,000 a month on rent, that's $60,000 a year after-tax money, just to have a place to sleep for 6 hours a night. You're not building equity, you're not buying an asset, you're literally burning $5,000 every single month just to signal to your neighbors that you've made it. You're paying a premium for a view of other people who are also struggling to pay their rent. It's like a hall of mirrors, you know? And then there's the social maintenance tax. You have to maintain the image. You have to go to the $200 dinners, you have to buy the $15 cocktails, you have to wear the right brands. You think you're networking, but you're actually just subsidizing a lifestyle you can't afford. You're paying for membership in a club that would kick you out the second your credit card declined. You have to be seen at the right places. You have to take the right vacations. You have to post the right photos. It's like you're running on a treadmill that's set just one click faster than you can actually run. Let's talk about your kids, if you have them. You want the best for them, right? So you pay for private tuition because you're terrified of the local schools. You're dropping another $30,000, maybe $40,000 a year on school fees. You're paying for your child to be friends with other children whose parents are also drowning in debt. It's a cycle. You're teaching them that this is what success looks like, a life of high-stress performance and zero actual wealth. When you add it all up, the taxes, the $5,000 rent, the private schools, the social upkeep, what are you left with? You're left with maybe 5% of your income if you're lucky. You're saving pennies while you're spending dollars. You're building a sandcastle on the beach right as the tide is coming in. You're one bad quarter, one layoff, one medical emergency away from total financial collapse. You're living a high beta life with zero margin for error. You see, lifestyle inflation is a silent killer. In places like NYC and SF, it's not just an option, it's the default. You think you're being logical, you think you're just living your life, but the math says you're failing. You're working 80 hours a week to support a lifestyle that you don't even have time to enjoy. You're the architect of your own exhaustion. You're building a house of cards and calling it a mansion. You have to realize that until you change the math, you're just a very well-paid hamster on a very expensive wheel. You're not winning, you're just losing at a higher level. So let's talk about Alex. You know Alex, maybe if you're being honest with yourself, you are Alex. Alex is sitting in a dim living room right now, swirling a glass of $200 Cabernet. It's a beautiful wine, right? Like you can see the legs on the glass, you can smell the oak, you can feel the prestige. But here's the thing, Alex isn't actually tasting the wine. You see, Alex is staring at the wall, thinking about 3 a.m. You know that 3 a.m. feeling, don't you? It's that cold, hollow realization that hits you when the house is quiet and you're forced to look at your life without the filters. You see, Alex has $30,000 in credit card debt, and every sip of that wine feels like liquid guilt. You think you're living the dream, but you're actually just living a lie that you've bought on credit. You spend your entire week in a high-pressure office, right? You're grinding, you're taking the hits, you're dealing with the boss you can't stand and the deadlines that never end. And at the end of the day, you tell yourself this lie. You say, I deserve this. You've heard that before, haven't you? You tell yourself you deserve the luxury car lease. You tell yourself you deserve the $500 dinners. You call it revenge spending. It's like you're trying to punish your bank account for how miserable your job makes you, but you're not punishing the bank. You're punishing your future self. You're using psychological math to justify a financial disaster. You think, if I work this hard, I should at least have nice things. So you buy the things. You buy the watch, you buy the designer bags, you buy the lifestyle, but you're not buying happiness. You're just buying a heavier set of chains. Let's look at the cage you've built. It's what I call the golden cage. You see, most people think a cage has iron bars and a lock, but your cage is made of premium leather seats and high-end electronics. You've plated the bars in 24-karat gold so you can tell yourself you're free. But you're not free, you're trapped by the maintenance of your own image. You have to keep working the job you hate to pay for the things that are supposed to make you forget you hate the job. You see how that works? It's a perfect vicious circle. You're in a state of Stockholm Syndrome with your own debt. You've started to love the things that are kidnapping your life. You've started to identify with the very things that are keeping you from being truly wealthy. You defend the debt, you explain it away, you say, oh, it's just how the world works now, but deep down you know it's not. You know that you're just a high-end prisoner, and then there's the loneliness. You feel it, don't you? You're at a dinner party with people who look just like you. You're all wearing the right clothes, you're all talking about your latest vacations. You're all performing, but you look around the table and you realize that nobody is actually talking about reality. You're all just terrified that someone will find out you're one paycheck away from a total collapse. You see, you have to maintain the facade. You have to keep the mask on because if you take it off, you're just a person who's broke in a very expensive suit. You're surrounded by people, but you're completely alone in your financial rot. You can't tell your friends you can't afford the trip. You can't tell your family that the success they see is actually just a pile of unpaid invoices. You're lonely because you've traded your authenticity for an aesthetic. You think you're in control, but you're just reacting. You're reacting to the stress. You're reacting to the social pressure. You're reacting to the I deserve this voice in your head. You see, you've become a master of the psychological math that keeps you broke. You think, well, if I don't buy this, what was all that work for? You're measuring your worth by the things you can display, not the peace of mind you actually have. You're hollow, Alex. You're financially hollow. You have the shell of a successful person, but inside there's just a growing sense of panic. You're like a movie set. Everything looks great from the front, but if you walk around the back, it's just plywood and duct tape. You have to ask yourself, how much longer can you do this? How much longer can you pretend that the $200 wine tastes good when you're losing sleep over the minimum payments? You see, the wine is just a distraction. The clothes are just a distraction. The debt is the reality. You're trading your life, your actual finite hours on this planet for things that don't even make you happy. You're selling your freedom to buy a version of yourself that other people will admire. But those people, they're just as scared as you are. They're in their own golden cages, staring at their own ceilings at 3 a.m. Most people will never break out. Most people will just keep polishing the bars of their cage until the day they die. But you see the rot now. You see the I deserve this trap for what it really is. You see the loneliness of the facade. You realize that you've been your own jailer this whole time. You've been the one signing the credit card slips. You've been the one choosing the wine over the peace of mind. You've been the one building the cage, bar by golden bar. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. You have to decide if you want to keep playing the character of Alex or if you want to actually be free. Because you can't have both. You can't have the fake success and the real peace. You have to choose. You see, you've spent so much time worrying about what you deserve, but maybe what you actually deserve is to stop lying to yourself. Maybe what you deserve is to finally, for once, be able to drink a glass of water and sleep through the night without the debt screaming in your ear. You have to stop the revenge spending. You have to stop the performance. You have to face the math. Because the math doesn't care about your feelings, and it definitely doesn't care about the wine. So let's get into the actual mechanics of this because, ideas are great, but without a roadmap, you're just a person with a dream and a very expensive lifestyle. We're talking about the tactical roadmap here, your actual exit strategy. You see, the first thing you have to master is what I call reverse budgeting. Most people, and I mean like 99% of the people you work with, they do it backwards. They get their paycheck, they pay their mortgage, they pay for the car, they go out to dinner, and then they save whatever's left, if there's anything left. But you're not going to do that anymore. You have to pay yourself first. And I don't mean like putting a few $100s in a savings account. I mean, you treat your freedom like it's the most aggressive debt collector on the planet. You decide on a number, a big uncomfortable number, and that money leaves your account the second your salary hits. You automate it. You make it so you never even see it. You have to learn to live on the rest. It's psychological math, really. If you don't see the money, you don't miss the money. You just adapt. You're a high earner, so your leftover is still more than what most families live on. You have to realize that every dollar you save now is a day of your life. You're buying back later. Now, once you've got that flow moving, you need a place to put it. You can't just dump it into a checking account and hope for the best. You need the 3-bucket strategy, but we're going to calibrate it for someone at your level. Think of these buckets like the life support systems on a spacecraft. You have to keep them balanced or, things go south pretty quickly. The first bucket is your security bucket. This is your sleep at night fund. It's boring. It's cash. It's short-term bonds, maybe some high-yield accounts. It doesn't make you rich, but it keeps you from being poor when the market decides to take a nosedive. You need enough in here to cover 2 years of your life. And why 2 years? Because most market cycles recover in that time frame. You don't want to be forced to sell your stocks when they're down 30% just because you need to buy groceries. The second bucket is your growth bucket. This is where the heavy lifting happens. This is your VTI, your VOO, your diversified equity portfolio. You want this bucket to be like a high-performance engine. It's built to run hot. You put the majority of your wealth here because you need that compounding interest to outpace the world. You have to be aggressive here because you're not just saving for a rainy day, you're building a fortress. And then you have the joy bucket. This is the part most financial gurus tell you to cut, but I'm telling you to manage it. You're a human being, not a spreadsheet. You need to spend money on things that actually bring you utility. But here's the thing, you have to be ruthless about what actually brings you joy and what is just, noise. That brings us to the status tax. You know exactly what I'm talking about. It's the invisible tax you pay to look like the person people expect you to be. It's the luxury SUV with the massive lease payment. It's the club memberships you don't use but keep because of the networking. You have to realize that for high earners, the status tax is the single biggest leak in your boat. You can cut this tax by 70% without losing a single real friend or a bit of social standing. It's about quiet luxury, or better yet, invisible wealth. You buy the high-quality coat with no logo. You drive the reliable, high-end car for 10 years instead of leasing a new one every 3. You stop trying to signal wealth to people who are actually poorer than you. When you stop paying the status tax, your savings rate explodes. You start to realize that the only person you need to impress is the version of you that's 55 and wants to be sitting on a beach instead of in a boardroom. Now, let's talk about the math of the exit. You've probably heard of the 4% rule. Forget it. For you, the 4% rule is too risky. You're looking at a longer retirement horizon and, let's be honest, the world is getting more volatile. You need to aim for a 3.5% safe withdrawal rate. I know it sounds conservative, but you have to think about the sequence of returns risk. If the market drops the year you quit and you're pulling out 4%, you're burning through your principal way too fast. At 3.5%, you have a massive margin of safety. It's like a plane carrying extra fuel for a cross-ocean flight. You hope you don't need it, but you'll be damn glad it's there if you hit a headwind. And you have to factor in the one thing that eats high net worth individuals alive: medical inflation. Standard inflation is one thing, but medical costs move at a completely different speed. You have to restructure your portfolio to hedge against this. You need assets that have a high correlation with healthcare costs, or just, enough of a buffer in your security bucket to handle a six-figure surgery 20 years from now. You have to look at your portfolio not just as a pile of money, but as a multi-generational shield. You're not just retiring, you're opting out of a system that is designed to keep you working until you're too tired to enjoy the money you've made. You have to be cold-blooded about the numbers. You have to look at your spreadsheet and see freedom, not just digits. You have to trust the math, stay the course, and remember that every time you say no to a useless status symbol, you're saying yes to your future self. You've got the income. You've got the talent. Now, you just need the discipline to follow the roadmap. It's not about being cheap, it's about being strategic. You're playing a long game, and the prize isn't a better car, it's a better life. You can see it, can't you? The moment you walk away and never have to look back. That's what we're building here. That's what all of this is for. So here's the thing. You've been looking at the completely wrong scoreboard this whole time. Most people, they measure success by the physical weight of the watch on their wrist or the shiny logo on their car keys. But you need to start measuring it by the weight of the silence on a Monday morning when you don't have to wake up to an alarm. Let's do some psychological math here, okay? If you spend $50,000 on a luxury car just to look rich, you haven't actually gained $50,000 in status. You've just lost 3 years of your freedom that you'll never ever get back. You see, your real net worth isn't a dollar amount in a bank account. It's a time amount. It's the number of days, months, and years you can live exactly as you do right now without ever having to trade your soul for a paycheck. Most people out there are just 1 or 2 missed checks away from total financial collapse, even if they're driving a brand new Porsche. That's the trap, It's what they call the golden handcuffs. You get the raise, so you buy the bigger house. You get the promotion, so you lease the better car. And suddenly, you realize you're not the owner of your life. You're just the high-paid tenant of your own ego. You're working 14 hours a day just to maintain a lifestyle for people you don't even really like. You're trapped by your own success, and you don't even see the bars on the cage you built. It's a cinematic tragedy, really. You're the star of the show, but you're also the prisoner in the tower you constructed with your own credit card. You have to break that cycle. You have to stop playing the role of a rich person and actually start becoming one. Being rich is quiet. It's boring. It's having the absolute power to say no to things you don't want to do. Most people can't say no because they owe too much money for things they didn't even need in the first place. You're going to be different. You're going to realize that your freedom is the only asset that actually matters in this world. You're going to stop seeking validation from strangers and start seeking peace for yourself. It's about the shift, the identity shift. You aren't a consumer, you're an owner. You aren't a victim of the system, you're the architect of your own exit strategy. You have to stop buying things to impress people you'll never see again. You have to start buying back your time. You have to start buying your freedom, because at the end of the day, the only person you have to answer to is the version of you 10 years from now. And that person, they don't care about your watch. They care that you gave them their life back. They care that you chose them over the status. So if you're ready to actually make that move, if you're ready to stop the act and start the real work, I want you to go ahead and comment the word freedom down below. It shows me you're paying attention. It shows me you're ready. I'm King, and I'll see you in the next video.